Good morning, everybody, and welcome again to the Next Practice Institute. I'm Amy Elizabeth Fox, the CEO and co-founder of Mobius, and we are delighted to have you. Belovedness as Alchemy. NPI's annual gathering was created as a place of learning, scholarship, fellowship, elevation, refinement, and healing. We come together at a threshold moment where the systems, processes, and institutions we have counted on to provide stability and predictability are breaking down. We are moving quickly from a time of increasing complexity and interdependence to a time of chaos and massive destabilization. Futurist James Kosko called this phenomenon BANI. BANI stands for brittle, anxious, non-linear, and incomprehensible. It encapsulates well the inner state of leaders trying to make meaning of all that is happening and plot a course forward. When you look up advice about how to lead in chaos, all of the advice suggests that it's a moment in time, that it's a crisis. But I would suggest chaos is the new black. As such, we're going to need very different transformational capabilities than the earlier competencies we relied on. This is just a glimpse of the history of leadership development as it sought to prepare leaders for a different kind of world. 20 years ago, almost all of the leadership development was focused on skills development, behavioral change, important interactive and interpersonal competencies like giving feedback, facilitating difficult conversations, stakeholder management, influence without authority. We were asked to help organizations define their purpose and get alignment on their mission. And we started to see the introduction through MIT of systems thinking into organizations. All of that proved useful, but insufficient. As things got more complex, we had to widen the lens of what we were helping executives to do. We had to help them have change agility and adaptive capacities. We had to help them innovate. We had to help them have greater degrees of emotional intelligence and be able to build trust and psychological safety on their teams. We had to help them with customer centricity and an enterprise mindset and diversity and inclusion. I would suggest that, again, we are on the threshold where those competencies will be necessary but insufficient. In a BANI world, we need to help people mystically, transformationally. We need to help them emergently. So one of two things will happen, and you'll see this in your client systems, I'm very sure. Either people will be so afraid of the unknown that they will double down on command and control, and they'll revert to the first column because they'll need to feel secure. But the visionary organizations, or any organization that's hit the wall of that ability, will start to become interested in how do they help people function as a living human system? How do they help organizations become anti-fragile and more resilient? How do they help organizations cultivate stillness and spaciousness to listen to the whispers of the future? How do they help organizations have genuine collective intelligence where many people are involved in generating the solution or even defining the problem? They're going to have to help people learn to work with emergence versus strategy and plans, to foster creativity and innovation. There's going to be a lot more attention on the quality of the workplace and whether people feel a sense of belonging and a sense of joy in the work. And of course, the AI transformation is well upon us, and with it is going to come a change demand that we've never seen before. So what does leading in chaos require? I'm going to describe it to you in conventional terms and then mystical terms. In conventional terms, it means pattern spotting, noticing the weak signals, tracking emergent trends, making novel connections that have never happened before, It means experimentation, small-scale approaches to change, mini transformations within the organization, safe-to-fail experiments. It means sense-making, continuously interpret the data as it arrives and not being fixed to a rigid perspective, allowing situations to evolve and unfold and iterating with them, and making contingency plans and scenario plans versus strategy. It means collaboration and diversity, seeking multiple perspectives to generate insights, being curious and open to persuasion, and most of all, I think it means looking for the parts of the picture that you might be missing. Patience with uncertainty, allowing solutions to evolve over time, not rushing prematurely to a solution or even a definition of the problem, and narrative building, telling stories as a way to evoke the path forward. From a more energetic and transformational lens, we could think of Bani as requiring this. If the world is more brittle and we can't count on the things that we normally count on to ground us and offer us guidance, then we're going to need a whole other degree of groundedness and centeredness ourselves. If we can't ground ourselves by what's outside, then we need to anchor ourselves in our principles and values inside. If we don't rely on the structures externally to give us faith, then we must ourselves generate that faith. And in a brittle, ever-fracturing, fragmented world, the quality of stillness is going to become even more important. In a world that's more and more anxious, we're going to need to know how to regulate ourselves and one another to down-regulate the level of fear and anxiety that we're struggling with. We're going to need to be able to tolerate a certain amount of productive disequilibrium and to increase the thresholds by which organizations can tolerate uncertainty and instability. And to make all of that possible, we're going to need rest and renewal. And we're also going to need to slow down because anxiety has a habit of making us move faster and decide quicker and truncate discomfort, when actually the wise action is the inverse, slowing down, breathing. If the world is nonlinear, then we need to learn to think synergistically. We need to be able to be drawing from a variety of sources and seeing how different ideas and different opportunities weave together. Most excitedly, we need to be able to have exponential imagination because things are not going to change in increments anymore. They're going to change in leaps and bounds. And it's on us to be able to widen and broaden our imagination to believe that the world tomorrow could be very different than the world today. We're going to have to look at exigencies and look for incoming data in non-ordinary places. Look to the arts, look to other industries, look to other contexts for information and for ideas, and get used to a certain kind of dynamism. This is leadership in motion. And then finally, if the world is increasingly incomprehensible, we'll need ever more collective intelligence because it will take all of us to understand and make meaning of a picture that's constantly moving and constantly sorting. We have to have the humility to say, I don't know, and to see that as a leadership move. We have to be able to scope what we have influence over and what's out of our control. It's going to be like the Serenity Prayer. We want to elongate the diagnostic phase of a problem because just getting our heads wrapped around the various intertwined dimensions of a situation is going to take longer than it used to. And if we misdiagnose or truncate that, it will come at a high cost. And finally, we're going to need to manage the shock field because in a context where everything is hard to understand and it's hard to make meaning, the system naturally responds with a sense of shock and freeze. And so we're going to have to help people revitalize themselves in the face of that freeze. I think a beautiful way of saying all of that together is we're going to have to befriend the mystery. So, what does that really mean? Francis Weller says about this time, we are not living in ordinary times. We are in the long dark, a time of collapse, of unraveling, of uncertainty. It may take decades, even generations, to move through this. Many of us will not see what happens on the other side. And yet, even in darkness, seeds grow. This is the long dark, folks. And it's our job in this room to plant the seeds that will grow into a better future. What are the fundamental tasks at such a time? I think there are three: renewal, restoration, and renaissance. Let me talk a little bit about each. The first thing we have to do in renewal is to restore relation. Most organizations are built on an organizational cultural fabric which is not embodied, which is anti-relation, anti-interdependence, and anti-spirit. In other words, it's technical and mechanical and anti-life. So the very first thing we have to do is help organizations reweave intimacy into the workplace and remove the notion that the personal life and the professional life, the deeply intimate and the deeply heroic, are separate. When I teach my leadership programs, I ask people, what could you do that would ask somebody to support you emotionally? I don't mean problem solving. I mean, what could you ask that would be a sign of emotional support? Every group I've ever led comes up with two: hug me and listen. That's not a good enough vocabulary. There's an infinite array of ways we could support each other emotionally, and we need to learn again, or learn anew, how to do that. We need to be willing to risk dropping our guard, dropping our shield, dropping our wall, and being in touch with the interiority of ourselves and another person. I had this notion last week that we should build nests inside companies. And a nest is a little group that a person joins when they join the company. They get assigned to a nest, and the nest walks with them all the days of their tenure in that company, and accompanies their hardships, and accompanies their triumphs, and accompanies their life's milestones, and accompanies their longings. And that just by building such a nest, we would start to create pockets of intimacy and connection and community inside of organizations. And I imagined that when somebody was hired, they would share with their nest on their first time at the meeting of the nest their life narrative. And we've seen over and over and over that when somebody shares the story of their life, a few things happen. One, they feel widely accepted. It's so de-shaming when you take time and people listen to the walk that you've walked and the hardships that you've faced and the struggles that you've had. Secondly, the group naturally and organically loves the person, because it's impossible to hear of somebody's crucible moments and triumphant moments, to hear of their tender heart and their sweetest moments of aloneness and longing, and not come to care for them. So it's a marvelous way to weave a group together and to give everybody a chance to feel a sense of communion with each other. I also imagined life burst moments, that a company would commit to stopping the work and, having moments of dance, moments of music, moments of poetry, moments of drumming, moments of martial arts, that we would start to infuse the poetics back into the workplace as a gesture of enchantment, as a gesture of inspiration, as a recognition that as things get scarier, people need the aesthetics as a way to re-inspire themselves on a daily basis. And I also imagined that we might create a ritual space where somebody in an organization who has just lost a parent, or just birthed a child, or just ran a marathon, whatever it would be, would have a space in which they could consecrate what's occurring and unfolding in their lives. We are so divorced of ritual space in society and places to commemorate and consecrate the holy things that happen in our lives. In our leadership programs on the last night, we usually make a space for people to do a ritual, anything that they would like to do, 3 or 4 minutes. And they're unbelievably poignant because they reach back for things that were undone for 20 years. I never mourned my father. I never heard my mother speak words of love. I never danced the dance I was meant to dance. I never spoke the poem that I've written. So I imagine the workplace becoming such a sacralized container that there's constantly an opportunity and an invitation for people to celebrate one another and witness one another in such a way. And of course, most importantly, workplace will have to become a place of stillness, of reflection, of contemplation. We're in a time of great swirl and great suffering. And if we have all of our attention on outside events, we will not have the resource or the proximity to the divine to offer something that could be homeopathic to that suffering. But if we get really quiet and we allow ourselves to stop and be still, we have the possibility of being infused with a light that can shine far and wide. And leaders are going to have practices of such stillness. And finally, I imagined a wellness day, which is not a sick day. That each employee might get 3 wellness days that they could declare any time during the year, call in well, and go off and do whatever you do. So renewal is the first pillar. Renewal through friendship, renewal through community, renewal through belonging, renewal through the arts, and renewal through quiet. The second extremely important pillar of this time is restoration. We simply have to go back and heal what is unhealed, speak what has yet to be spoken, feel what has yet to be felt, apologize and atone for what has yet to be rectified. It is the work of our generation to turn towards the trauma, personal, family, ancestral, and collective, and begin this alchemical process of metabolizing hundreds of years of violence. I've had the privilege of doing 1,000 trauma screenings of some of the most successful people on the planet. And I can tell you with great certainty that there is hardly anyone whose life has not been touched by trauma. What I mean by trauma is any event that's overwhelming and impossible to process at the moment that it's happening. Any time I have to go numb and dissociate in order to metabolize what's happening to me. Examples of trauma are, there are many, but I'll name some only because I think it's important that we start being comfortable and we stretch our ability to tolerate talking about these things. Alcoholism, domestic violence, sexual abuse, colonialism, poverty, forced migration, the death of a parent, an illness in the family, parents whose parents were so wounded that they didn't express love, and as a result, the parents themselves cannot mirror or celebrate or attune to their child. Racism, anti-Semitism, homophobia. These are the scars of the human fabric that have gone too long unaddressed. Why does this matter in a leadership context? Because these things have enormous impact on the way people behave in the workplace. They're shut down, they're angry, they're reactive, they drive themselves too hard, they drive one another too hard, they micromanage, they create conflict all around them, they intimidate people, they don't have the courage to speak up, they won't ask for what they need. On either end of the spectrum, too aggressive or too docile, we see frozen life expressing itself with the past just repeating itself. So it's on us, all of us, to make the workplace a place of healing and restoration. My friend Shai Tubali says, when we allow trauma to become a doorway, it leads not back into pain, but into deeper life. When we allow trauma to become a doorway, it leads not back into pain, but into deeper life. Because we're so traumatized, we have a pandemic of superficiality. We're operating with one another in anti-intimate ways because we're guarding the hurt in our heart. When we can create safe harbors where that hurt is welcome, then life starts to penetrate us at a whole other level. And only from that imminent, fully embodied place do we have the possibility of creating novelty and beauty and joy. My friend Bayo Akomolafe, a Nigerian philosopher, says this: the easier thing to say about the goings-on today would be to gently insist that everything is going to be all right eventually. The difficult thing to say might be to insist that everything is going to get a lot worse now, and that by doing your part, we can slowly resist the convergence of forces making our planet even more dangerous and lining the skies with fonts of war. But I want to say the rare thing, not the easy thing or the difficult thing. And that is to say that when things get hard, rigid, and imperviously solid, cracks are the first responders. Cracks are not simply ruptures to be feared or repaired. They are the sacred stutters in the script of certainty, the polyphonic tremble that interprets the grammar of control. Cracks do not just let light in, they let worlds in. When we say cracks come with their own weather, we name their atmosphere of grief and astonishment. Grief and astonishment. Their humidity of longing. Their winds that do not blow in straight lines. We name the business of becoming undone in ways that make touch possible. We speak to the climates of feeling that resist tidy names, where sobbing might be a form of measurement, where sobbing might be a form of measurement, where disorientation is a form of orientation. The crack does not invite repair, it invites reverence, not sealing, but sensing, not a plan, but a pulse. We have an opportunity, friends, to be the one who steps forward at the moment of the crack and offers a helping hand. The moment of the crack is a pregnant moment, full of possibility for something new to emerge. And then finally, Renaissance. A simple way to say this is, it's all about love. This is a love story that we're in, folks. And the invitation of this week is to burst your heart open to new levels of love. I mean love in a radical sense. Loving yourself first and foremost. Loving each other. Loving the stranger. Loving the other. Loving life. The antidote to the fear that Bani is going to strike is love. Rumi says it this way: don't move the way fear makes you move. Move the way love makes you move. Don't move the way fear makes you move. Move the way love makes you move. We're being asked to be lovers of life. The first recipient of that love has, of course, to be yourself. You have to do the hard work of loving all of you, the light and the shadow, your joy and your anger, your shame, your sadness, your grief, your guilt. You have to cradle it up and love it as a mother would love a child. And my experience is, this is not a one-time event. This is a over and over and over mudra of self-compassion, self-acceptance, self-blessing. I found this quote that I thought said it very well. Grace is the place when I turn to face all my monsters, demons, shadow walkers in my soul, and love them fiercely, love them with every cell of my being, and welcome them deeply into my heart. I need to say thank you for protecting me, for being the sentinels outside my door, keeping the human darkness away. Grace is when I can fall to my knees in prayer and gratitude for the fierceness of my psyche that gave me these guardians and gatekeepers. And grace is when I can lay a bouquet of flowers at the threshold and say, I am no longer in need of your services. That's a triumphant moment. I am no longer in need of your services. I release you into the arms of eternal love, and I turn and walk away deeper into the mysteries of my soul that came to the world to offer the secrets encoded in my bones when I departed the ancestral realms. Grace is when you keep the promise you made before you were born, the promise to bring your sacred gifts, your holy wisdom, your thread of beauty to weave into creation. Grace is remembering you are a blessed pearl in the strand of birth, death, and rebirth. Then there's loving others. Loving others when it's easy is easy. Loving others when it's hard is noble and good. Loving others who are different than you. Loving others who would take up violence against you. Loving others who see the world very differently than you. This is the work of this time. If we're to be peacemakers, we have to be radically able to love that which seems hard to love. To love is to accept a soul entirely, not wishing that the person was otherwise, not hoping for change, nor clinging to some ideal past. To love is to cherish the individual standing before you presently, charms, quirks, and all. This is not love for who you might become, but love for who you are. To love is to give someone a piece of your heart that you will never, ever reclaim. What if we were all to love so fiercely and so courageously all of the time? What if you greeted each other this week as if you were friends forever? Try it and see. So as a practitioner, it's my job to sharpen my tool set, to polish my instrument. This is a week of refinement because all of us care for the world and hope that we can contribute to making something gentle and something good. It starts with you. You are the instrument of the change that you will make. Most deeply, it asks that we believe in the core of our being, in the goodness of life, that life is not something happening to us, but something happening for us. And when we take that orientation, the book of our lives, the events of our lives, the challenges of our lives are seen as gifts to harvest. We have the alchemy to turn them into gold because we use them as an opportunity to look for what's unfinished and unhealed in our own psyche. The events of daily life are an outpicturing of your psyche. So to the degree that you can investigate what in you is being activated by whatever triggers you or whatever is hard for you or whatever you struggle with, you can alchemize daily life to be a resource for your own healing and transformation. There's a deeper kind of trust, Shai tells us, that does not depend on things getting better. It is the trust that even if the world shatters, the goodness of life remains unshaken. We are being asked to be the ones who remember this truth, that God is good. We are the ones who are being asked to remember the eternal flame does not go out. We are the ones who are being asked to remember love. In the long run, this is a devotional game. Change is as much devotional as it is psychological. It is out of love that we ultimately reshape our lives. It is a matter of discipline, a word which, as I tell most of the people I work with, has the same root as the word disciple. In other words, to what will we be devoted? What is it that we will love and serve? This is a week that gives you a chance to ask these questions. To what will I be devoted? What will I love and serve? The heart is the most reliable guide when the world feels chaotic to come full circle. It doesn't just feel, it knows. And through its wisdom, you can find meaning even in the darkest silence. This is a love game, everybody. Thank you very much.